This is going to be a hard video to make because I'm also going through this right now. But I think it's also important that I make this video so that you guys can understand how grief works and how our faith helps us navigate grief. This video is being made because one of our classmates lost her mom. Her mom passed away, and I know that you as a class are so wonderful and love each other so very much. You guys are definitely a family, and I know that the hurt and loss for one of our classmates becomes the hurt and loss for us all. I can't imagine the kind of pain that she is feeling right now, but we just want her to know how much we love her during this time. And I'm sure that for some of you it is also causing you to think about things about what if, or it has started you thinking about what it would be like if you lost your parents in these crazy uncertain times, with just the fear that we can contract this coronavirus. You know, we are staring at mortality right in the face. And I think that we are made even more aware of how fragile life is. You know, until we experience an immense loss personally, death just seems like something that we know happens, but are not concerned about. When you lose someone you love, death feels so immense and like a monster almost. And what follows after the loss of someone becomes even harder to bear. Grief is what we call it. The loss of losing someone, this feeling of just hopelessness, can last forever. It varies. Right after the loss of someone, grief will feel immense, like a ton of bricks or a massive 100-foot wave crashing down upon a ship, breaking it to pieces. And that feeling of hopelessness and loss and grief will stay for a while after that. Over time, that grief can lessen, but the place where that person is will never be replaced, and so we will still feel hurt, and we will still feel the loss, and we'll still miss them. And that is perfectly normal. And in the Bible, God, or Jesus, sat on a mountain and preached to the people, and he said a couple really important things. Two of them: blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Part of the Beatitudes, these two little phrases and parts of scripture are from the Beatitudes. And they remind us that, yes, this hurt and this suffering and this grief is now. But if we trust in our God, that grief and that mourning and that suffering will be made new. It does not mean that we should not cry about it. It does not mean that we should not, that we shouldn't let our feelings or feel all of the immense feelings that we are going through. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't do that. It means that we should do that. It means that we should grieve, we should mourn, we should cry, we should cry out into the heavens in anger. Jesus himself cried at the grave of his friend Lazarus. Jesus, who's God, who knew that in the matter of minutes, Lazarus was going to walk out of that grave fully alive. But Jesus cried. Jesus felt loss. When Jesus was suffering upon the cross, he yelled out to God, God, why have you abandoned me? He felt anger and frustration at God. If we are to gain anything from looking at the life of Jesus and the sufferings of Jesus, the biggest thing that we should take away is that Jesus is an example of what suffering and grief should be like. We should be allowed, and we are allowed, to feel all of those feelings. But after we are done, or after in the moments of peace, turn back and look to God. Turn back and see that God has us all in the palm of his hands. Christ and God and himself does not look at our lives and say, well, I'm going to just give them suffering for the sake of suffering. I want my people to suffer. God is not that kind of God. Our God instead suffers with us. He hurts alongside us. He desperately wants to take away the grief that we are feeling. And he allows us to, because that is a part of our nature. What he does ask is that as we grieve, we turn to him and we look to him for peace. It doesn't make it easier. It doesn't bring back those whom we've lost. It doesn't fill the place in our hearts where those that we love were and are. But it gives us strength as we continue through our lives to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be. Over the next couple of days, I'm going to be, over the next 9 days, I'm going to be saying a rosary in honor of our classmate's mom. We will have a little Zoom, I'll set up a little Zoom meeting for us, so those of you who want to pray the rosary with me can pray with me. And we will do that for 9 days together. The rosary that we'll do is also going to include a couple other little parts to it. The litany of the Blessed Virgin Mary, a couple other prayers. We'll do this for the soul of our classmate's mother. Especially during this time, I wish I could be in a classroom with you to, be with you and pray with you in person, give you hugs if you need it. But until the time when we can be with each other again, I ask that you keep the souls of those who have passed on in your prayers. I pray that you keep the families of those who have passed on in your prayers. And I pray that you keep your families close. Give them hugs. Tell them how much you love them. Be the best versions of yourselves that you can be. Be good. Treat others the way God asks you to treat them. And remember that I love you. will see you all soon.